Traffic control operations have been heavily scrutinized lately because of several mishaps and highly publicized operational problems. Last week, U.S. Transportation Secretary Sean Duffy announced plans for a major overhaul to modernize the air traffic control infrastructure. It is 73 degrees at 9:01. Atlanta's most accurate and dependable forecast is coming up. A warning about the Fulton County Schools' financial future from the head of the district. Superintendent Mike Looney says the school system will face its biggest money challenges over the next 4 or 5 years.
We're on a collision course to insolvency unless we cut expenses, raise revenue, or some combination of both.
And that comes despite some tough decisions this year, including school closures and redistricting. The Fulton County School Board of Education approved a tentative $2.46 billion budget for fiscal year 2026. Georgia Congressman Barry Loudermilk is reacting to a new report showing Georgia ranks near the bottom for 2-day and 3-day mail delivery service.
So even though things are improved, we're still below, we're still the worst. And so there's a lot more work to be done.
Georgia's 2-day deliveries are on time about 62% of the time, the national average at 82%. The new rankings do show some improved mail delivery around Metro Atlanta, though, this past year. Nonetheless, WSB consumer expert Clark Howard says you need to shift the way you handle important items like bills.
Do not mail a payment, a check, in the Postal Service and expect that it's going to get to who you owe the money to in time or at all.
His advice is to do these types of transactions online, both for bill receiving and for payments. Russia and Ukraine trade insults as they start negotiations in Turkey, but plans for significant peace talks appear to fall apart after Russian President Putin fails to show up for a meeting with Ukrainian President Zelensky.
It's possible they'll come to some technical agreements about some small issues. It may be that they can agree to another exchange of prisoners between the two sides.
But analyst Brian Taylor does not see any major deal to bring the war to an end. Secretary of State Marco Rubio attending the meetings, but admits he does not have high expectations for an agreement either. The U.S. House takes another step toward a budget that finances President Trump's main goals. The Budget Committee is set to assemble the package today.
The measure turbocharges the president's agenda with more funding for the border, energy, and an extension of his 2017 tax cuts. But it also slashes spending for Medicaid and food assistance.
But congressional correspondent Nicole Killion says it's the cuts to Medicaid that have some Republicans divided. Speaker Johnson can only afford to lose 3 votes. He wants that measure to pass by Memorial Day. It is 9:03. The Mark Arum Show begins in less than 2 minutes. But first, it's time for live team coverage of traffic and weather together. Triple Team Traffic with Smiling Mark McKay.
All right, Graham, 6 hours after a tractor-trailer crashed on I-20 into Cobb County. The cleanup continues on the right side of the roadway. This is I-20 westbound, Panola Road, exit 71. Right lane taken out on the jam cam. That could continue through the morning, which means the delays will continue as well, leaving Stonecrest, Lithonia, which the backups now begin at Evans Mill Road. So put some extra time in if you're leaving Covington Conyers, heading toward 285 through DeKalb County this morning. Better ride on the West Freeway as you head past Six Flags. Still seeing brake lights, especially in the right lanes of I-20 eastbound past Fulton Industrial Boulevard, exit 49. How difficult is it into downtown Atlanta now, Ashley Frasca?
Really not too bad, but still a little crowded up from University Avenue on the connector. 7585 northbound trying to clear Freedom Parkway north of I-20. Triple Team Traffic, 95.5 WSB.
This is WSB meteorologist Christina Upwards. Partly to mostly cloudy today with highs in the upper 80s to low 90s, lows tonight in the low 70s. Tomorrow, heavy rain and thunderstorms roll through the morning hours, then drying out but cloudy in the afternoon, high 85. Mostly cloudy Sunday with scattered pop-up showers and thunderstorms, high 84.
It is 74 degrees in Peachtree Corners, 74 degrees in Powder Springs, and 73 degrees in Midtown Atlanta at 9:05. More news at 9:30. Breaking news when it happens. I'm Graham Carroll, 95.5 WSB.
Is it me, or did this week just fly by? It's Friday already, friends. Welcome. Payday Donut Friday on the Mark Arum Show. And we got a really big one for you today. First off, so I don't forget, 10:18 a.m., I am going to give you a keyword in the 5K a day bonus blitz. Another chance for you to win $1,000 just for listening to WSB Radio. So set a reminder on your phone, whatever you got to do, or just keep it locked here till 10:18. That is when I give you a 5K a day bonus blitz. A crazy story popped up on social media regarding James Comey yesterday, making a post that has been interpreted as a death threat to President Trump. Josh Rosen is the Justice Department reporter for CBS News. He's going to join us live in about 30 minutes to talk about the post, the reaction, and maybe the repercussions for James Comey. We've got political analyst Bill Crane live at 10:35, and really cool, fantastic comedian Kelsey Cook's going to join us live in the 11 o'clock hour. She is at the Punchline this weekend. Absolutely hilarious. If you've not seen her stuff, go to YouTube, check it out, or her Instagram page. She's really, really funny. So Kelsey Cook is going to join us. In a couple of minutes, we're going to go to Stephen Portnoy in D.C., to recap basically what happened yesterday at the Supreme Court. You might remember we were dipping in and out of the oral arguments yesterday surrounding the birthright citizenship issue. But Stephen's going to join us in just a couple of minutes because I wasn't able to watch the whole thing or listen to the whole thing, and you probably weren't either. So Stephen's going to break it down for us. I do want to start, though, in Abu Dhabi. President Trump has just wrapped up his 4-day Mideast tour, and by all accounts, a really successful tour. Jeff Zeleny has been traveling with the president in Abu Dhabi this morning.
The deal-making and diplomatic mission is now over, and President Trump, as you said, is on his way back to Washington, boarding Air Force One in the last hour, and talking to reporters a bit before the plane flew back to Washington, and he is focused on the potential peace talks between Russia and Ukraine. Of course, they have not evolved as the White House or Ukraine certainly would have liked. For a while, President Trump was suggesting he may go and personally mediate. Of course, he backed away from that after it was clear that Vladimir Putin was not going. But the president said he still holds out hope that he will have a direct conversation with Putin.
I think it's time for us to just do it. I said, they all said Putin was going and Zelensky was going, and I said, if I don't go, I guarantee Putin's not going. And he didn't go, and I understand that, but we're going to get it. We're going to get it done. So
when do you think you'll meet the president?
As soon as we can set it up. I would actually leave here and go. I do want to see my beautiful grandson.
On the agenda, when will the American and the Russian president speak on this, or will they? The White House clearly has been worried about being played by Vladimir Putin on this and other matters. So with the Middle Eastern trip in the rearview mirror, that becomes the next sitting challenger for this president. Never mind all the domestic challenges awaiting him back in Washington.
So Jeff Zeleny this morning in Abu Dhabi, President Trump on his way back to D.C. He mentioned, Deborah, I think it's his 11th grandchild. That
11, yep.
Yeah, so he's got a brand new grandson. He's very excited to get back there. So a lot of good economic deals there. But President Trump mentioned Vladimir Putin and the Russia-Ukraine talks. There was a hope, at least this time yesterday, that maybe President Trump might extend the trip. And he even hinted at it, that he might fly to Turkey and meet face-to-face with Vladimir Putin and Zelensky to see if he can help negotiate. But Putin's not coming, so Trump isn't going. We'll see what happens there. In fact, let's go to Kyiv right now. Nick Payton-Walsh on a convoluted process so far, Nick, on trying to get all of these teams to the same table.
Look, certainly the Ukrainians wanted talks on a significantly higher level than this. And yes, important to remind everybody, the Russians ignored a Ukrainian-European demand for a ceasefire on Saturday, backed by the United States, originally proposed by President Trump. And now we have this Istanbul meeting at a very junior level. The Ukrainians, frankly, sending their defense minister as a sign of how seriously they want to take it. But let's be honest, these are really talks about talks. We understand from a source close to some of these talks on the Ukrainian side that actually they're meeting between Zelensky and Putin, which Zelensky had proposed this, in fact, would be in itself. That is one of the elements actually being discussed. Yes, some symbolism there, certainly, but if you look on the Russian side, very junior technical level officials, technical talks is how a Turkish official, Turkey mediating this, described it. Highly unlikely we'll see significant outcome from this, and indeed, President Trump and his Secretary of State, Marco Rubio, really taking the wind out of the sails of the pressure to speed this up by essentially suggesting that until Putin and Trump meet personally, nothing's really going to happen. Here's what the president had to say.
I think it's time for us to just do it. I said, they all said Putin was going and Zelensky was going, and I said, if I don't go, I guarantee Putin's not going. And he didn't go, and I understand that, but we're going to get it. We're going to get it done. So
When do you think you'll meet the president?
as soon as we can set it up. I would actually leave here and go. I do want to see my beautiful grandson.
Now, just remind everyone, this is really Russia's timetable, Russia's suggestions, and indeed Russia now has to accept that offer, public as it is now, from President Trump for a bilateral with the White House head. Russia brushing aside concerns about further sanctions, brushing aside the suggestion of a ceasefire, and just frankly pursuing its own agenda. Many worried it's amassing forces near the eastern frontier, and the summer offensive is what they're stalling for.
Nick Payton-Walsh this morning in Kyiv. So that meeting, the hopeful meeting between President Trump and Vladimir Putin, will be the flashpoint in this whole thing. Obviously, you heard President Trump there. He wants to meet face-to-face with Vladimir Putin, feels he's got a good relationship with him. He thinks he can work his magic and get the deal done. Until that face-to-face happens, I am pessimistic that anything is going to be accomplished. And maybe even if they do meet, nothing ever happens or can happen because the two sides, Russia and Ukraine, want vastly different outcomes for this. But until we get that meeting, I can't say for sure what is going to happen with this Russia-Ukraine war. President Trump very confident he can get to a deal if he can meet face-to-face with Vladimir Putin. Now, does that mean Putin comes to the United States? Probably not. Does Trump go to Moscow? Probably not. Can they meet in Saudi Arabia again? Is President Trump going to hop back on Air Force One and meet with Vladimir Putin? That needs to happen to get a clear idea of if at all this Russia-Ukraine war can end, or at the very least have a temporary ceasefire. So obviously something very big we will continue to monitor. President Trump there, emphatically saying he wants to sit down face-to-face with Vladimir Putin and get something done, right? That was one of his big campaign promises, and the Russia-Ukraine war. You can hear it in his voice. He wants this to happen. He wants to meet with Putin. We'll see if that can happen. All right, yesterday on the show, we were monitoring the oral arguments at the Supreme Court circulating around the birthright issue, but not really. Joining us from ABC News, covering the Supreme Court oral arguments yesterday, Stephen Portnoy. Stephen, good morning. Thanks for your time. I wasn't able to listen or watch the whole thing. You were. What are the big takeaways from yesterday's hearing?
It's tough. Veteran court watchers found it difficult to count the votes here. And I don't think we're sure how it is going to play out. But as you heard yesterday, this really wasn't so much about the power of the president to direct that passports and Social Security numbers not be granted to the children of certain immigrants. It was really, and not just those here illegally, but also people here on visas, by the way. It wasn't just about that. It was really about the power of judges to prevent a president from doing something like that. The Solicitor General John Sauer, representing the Trump administration, said that this is a bipartisan problem that dates back, a couple decades, where judges have tried to strike down the acts of Democratic presidents, and judges have tried to strike down the acts of Republican presidents. And now he argues it's time for the Supreme Court to come in and say, no more. Well, what happens if the court does that? That was the focus of yesterday's argument, really. How is a person supposed to make sure that their rights aren't being violated, their constitutional rights? And in the case of birthright citizenship, the liberals say it's very clear to them. Sonia Sotomayor said that there are 4 times in the history of this that the Supreme Court has ruled that the 14th Amendment protects birthright citizenship. And if a president decides he doesn't like that anymore, or if a president were to say he didn't like the Second Amendment anymore and wanted to say, well, the founders never had it in mind that you could buy an AK-47 and kill a whole bunch of people so suddenly, and you're not a card-carrying member of a well-regulated militia, are you? ? And so therefore, I, as a Democratic president, decided that there'll be no more handguns, right? Or any other kind of firearm. Well, what is a law-abiding citizen supposed to do to protect his rights? Can he get an injunction from a judge to prevent the next Democratic president from doing that, or not? And if not, how is the proper, what's the proper way to go about this? Class action lawsuits? Well, how long does it take to certify a class in a class action? And what about the counter arguments, and how much harm could be done between now and a final ruling? And that was why Samuel Alito, staunch conservative, said, what's the point of this argument if in the end the practical problem won't be solved?
Interesting. Stephen Portnoy from ABC joining us on the Mark Arum Show. This was rushed to the Supreme Supreme Court. Will they rush with the decision? Any idea when we're going to hear a result from the Supreme Court?
As ever, there's no way to know that. I mean, traditionally, you'd expect that one of the more closely watched cases is resolved by the Supreme Court at the very end of the term. That would be about a month and a half from now, late June, maybe spills over to early July. The other option for the court, besides issuing a broad ruling with respect to nationwide injunctions, is to punt or somehow step out of this and to say, we're simply going to allow this issue to percolate up through the courts, and we'll get to it later. That could happen.
Interesting. So again, this was surrounding the birthright citizenship issue, but more about judicial power at the lower courts. Will the Supreme Court ever address the birthright citizenship issue and re-ratify the 14th Amendment? Is that going to be on the docket this summer?
One of the things that was talked about yesterday was this idea, and this is really in the weeds when it comes to the law, but it's cert before judgment. The court could decide, this birthright citizenship issue is not before us, but it's so important that we're going to decide to take it on, and we'll schedule oral argument on that next term. That could happen. We don't know if it will, and lots of different options for the justices. They get to sort of make their own way here, and we'll find out. Tell you about it as soon as we learn.
Final quick question, just for the lay of the land right now, Stephen, that the birthright citizenship, if someone's here on vacation, they have a child, that child is still a citizen of the U.S. for now.
Yes, under the rarest of circumstances, under the 1898 Supreme Court ruling in Wong Kim Ark, those exceptions would be, for example, if you are, let's just say, I don't know if there's a certain country that has a consulate in Atlanta, right? If you're representing your foreign government and you're here as a diplomat, your child will be recognized as a foreign national, not as an American. Those are one of the rare examples. But otherwise, if you happen to be on an extended vacation and you happen to give birth here, then yes, that's generally the way this works. And one of the issues that Brett Kavanaugh, the conservative justice, asked was, well, let's just say this order goes into effect. How is a hospital or a state that's administering benefits and registering citizens, how are they supposed to know all of a sudden if a baby is born in the U.S.? How should they treat that person differently? Because, it might be that the law says that benefits only go to American citizens. Well, how's the birth certificate supposed to be written so that it no longer, there's the assumption no longer is that if you have a birth certificate from an Atlanta hospital, that doesn't apply. That's not enough to be deemed a citizen.
We're actually huge with the diplomatic community here in Atlanta, so very pertinent example to all the diplomatic listeners of the Mark Arum Show. Stephen, as always, appreciate your time. Have a great weekend, buddy.
Yeah, you bet.
So everyone I've talked to said it seems like the four conservative justices are on one side, the liberals on the other. It might come down to Justice John Roberts to determine. We'll see. Stephen couldn't make a decision on what's going on, but obviously a very important case. All right, 1 hour from right now, I'm going to give you a keyword in the 5K a day bonus blitz. Another chance for you to win $1,000 here on the Mark Arum Show. When we come back after a quick break, I know a lot of you chug those energy drinks every single day to get you through your busy workday. Might be some bad news for you. Deborah will explain when we come back. But first, let's check that Friday morning drive around town live to the traffic center and Mike Shields.
And Mark's still dealing with a tractor trailer